Hey there. So I kind of wanted to make something a little different. I wanted to cover how I make music and how I think a lot of people could make music. And so I wanted to cover the process, and it's not as difficult as you think it is. It can be a lot easier than because it can be intimidating for people. They think, oh, I don't have any music experience. How am I supposed to write music? And just like drawing, it's just practice. So what you're probably going to want to do is install a program, be it LMMS, which is an open source music making program. It's pretty good. Or you can, if you have some money, or if you want to use the free trial, you can. There is a personal license you can use for FL Studio. That is a good program. That's actually what I'm going to be using personally in this video. However, keep in mind that LMMS can be used. It is a little more janky, and I stopped using it because my my instruments, they would just crash and stuff. So, and they didn't have the same level of quality that I liked. So, anyways, so back to what we're doing. So what you're going to want to do is get FL Studio, a free trial of it, or LMMS, and then you're going to want to pick an instrument. Now, what we're going to do is I generally start with a melody. However, you can start with, either a rhythm, or you can start with a bass line. However, I recommend starting with a melody, and I also recommend using the piano to write that melody, because the piano is very versatile. It can be changed into other instruments, and it still sounds just as good from my experience. So I start writing my melodies on the piano, and I usually start with, with C major, and I don't touch any of the black keys when I play, because I am not adept in music theory. But we're gonna see how we can amend that. So you're going to write a little simple melody, just dabble around, have some fun with it. I do recommend, if something comes into your head while you're writing this melody and you're like, ooh, that would sound really nice, try to hit it right, try to really just emulate what's in your head as you're playing. And so, because what sounds good in your head is probably going to sound good as you play it. And I want you to keep that in mind, and just make sure that you're not hitting any black keys. I'm going to remind you, we will get to that. We will. But right now, we're just trying to write a melody in C major. Now, once you got your melody, once you feel pretty content with the first section of your melody, just make a melody that's about, I want to say, 5 to 7 seconds long. And then what you're going to do is, or you're going to decide, okay, do you want to keep this as the piano, or do you want to change the instrument? So in this case, let's just change the melody to a violin, right? And, if you don't have good instruments, I highly recommend Toho open source instruments. I can show you how to get to that real quick here, and it's pretty easy to find, but Toho has some really good instruments, like their sweet trumpet is super good. But anyways, I'm getting really off track. But so once you have your melody, and once you've changed it to the instrument you would like, now what you're going to do is you're going to want to either create a bass line or a rhythm for that. And so you're going to take maybe a drum, and you're going to have a little rhythm to it. But first, before we get to the percussion, I'm going to show you how to transpose your music into a different key. So we've written your melody, right? And so now we want to set the tone of your melody. So we're going to transpose your song into a different key. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have that key, we're going to make sure that you stay within that key. And it's important that you stay within the key that you're writing in. If you try to experiment a little too much and you're still new to making music, and you try to play out of key, it's gonna sound a little janky. You could pull it off, but it's very unlikely. Music theory, there's a lot of consistency to it. Anyways, so we're gonna transpose this to a different key and set the tone. And then what we're gonna do is we are going to take the percussion instrument that we want. Let's just say I'm gonna pick like a snare drum or something, and we're gonna have a little rhythm for it, and that rhythm is gonna set the pace of the song. It's gonna kind of determine how intense or how fast or slow you want the song to be. And if you just make a little basic rhythm, you can always, like, if you want the song to be a little more intense, a little more fast paced, you can always change the BPM, the beats per minute. And that can also that can affect the song. It can make it sound a little cool sometimes. Other times it can be a chaotic mess, but it's a little experimental. You know, it's okay to experiment with music like any art form. Then once you believe you've got your rhythm down, you know, your percussion, you're gonna want to make a little bit of a bass line, you know, and the bass line's important. So I recommend using Boo Bass that comes with FL Studio. Boo Bass it's a good bass. You can also use like a slap bass. I just recommend using a bass instrument, even double bass if you're doing something more orchestral. You just do a little bass line, and what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to make something complementary to your melody. So if you transposed your melody, what you're gonna want to do is you're going to want to stay in the key that you chose, and you're going to want to make a little rhythm to, I mean, not a rhythm, but you're going to want to make a little bass line to this melody, and you're going to want it to be complementary. You're going to want it to kind of sound like it's supporting the melody. A good bass line is very supportive to the main melody. It can really, really amp up your melody. It can really make it sound good. And so once you got a pretty good bass line, you know, you feel like things are kind of harmonizing a little bit, you're going to want to have some background noise, because usually, like, some people use white noise, some people use I don't know, they use something called a pad. So a pad is kind of like background noise, and you can have it really low in volume, but it's important that you just have a little bit of extra filler noise. It really fills in the gaps of your melody. And I like to have notes pretty close together with your melody, but that's me. But if you have a pad, you don't have to worry about that as much. So we're gonna add a little pad, and then I guess to wrap things up, if you really want to, you can start layering, but that's a little more advanced, and we'll just worry about these 4 things for now. And so once you've transposed your song, once you've written your melody, once you've picked your instruments, once you have gotten your bass line, and once you've made your pad, then you can start taking those same instruments and continuing to write another melody, another bass line, another percussive, you know, or beat, so to speak, you know, rhythm. And then you can take your pad, and I don't really change the pad. I like the pad to be pretty consistent, but that's just me. But what you could do with the pad is you can maybe make it go up a note or something, or a few. And then what you're going to want to do is, once you're satisfied with your beat or your song, you're gonna want to export it. And you know, in the trial, you can export songs, but you can't save what you've made. So keep that in mind. If you want to pay for a, you know, license, you can. And you can just export that, and that'll be a little excerpt. And if you feel like that's a really good song, you could keep working on it. But if you're struggling with the length, you're like, oh man, this is so short. This song I made. But just keep in mind, it's like your first song. So once you've made that, you something you can do that's pretty good is you can make a main melody, you can make a second melody, and then you can copy that twice, and that can sound pretty good, and that can last about 30 seconds sometimes. And it doesn't always go up to that, but it usually goes up to about 20 seconds. And there, you've made a song. Congrats. And it is something that you can be proud of. It's pretty cool. You've dabbled around a little bit, and so if you want to change the tone of your song, if you want to change the notes, just remember to transpose your song into a different key. And it's okay if you feel like maybe your bass isn't perfect, or maybe your rhythm isn't perfectly harmonized with your melody, and things aren't really harmonizing at first, because it is a skill, and getting things to harmonize can be really tricky at points. And so don't beat yourself up over that too much, and just keep in mind that this is a process and you'll get better at it. So thank you so much for watching, and if you want to make music of a specific genre, I could work on that. I have genres that I specialize in. However, I have dabbled a little bit in rock, and I've dabbled a little bit in jazz, and I've dabbled in orchestral music. So, and I really, really specialize in like video game music. So if there's any specific type of stuff that you guys want me to cover, I mean, I could. But this is more like a general like music kind of tutorial, and I wouldn't really even call it a tutorial. It's just, if you want to write a song, and it's fun for you to write music. So I hope you enjoy your little song if you made one. Thank you.